One of the things I hear most often from people your age isn't about pain exactly. It's quieter than that. It's the moment when you stand up at night, maybe to go to the bathroom, and you pause for just a second longer than you used to. Not because something hurts badly, but because your legs don't feel fully awake yet. There's a brief hesitation, a small doubt, and in that moment, something inside you wonders if this is just how things are now. I'm Dr. Daniel Carter, and I've sat across from many people who describe that same feeling. They don't panic, they don't complain loudly, they just notice that their legs don't respond with the same confidence they once did. It often shows up at night first, when the house is quiet and the body is tired. That's usually when these changes become hardest to ignore. What's important for you to hear is that this kind of change rarely arrives all at once. It tends to settle in slowly, almost politely. One day you grip the wall a little more. Another day you choose to sit down to put on your socks. None of it feels dramatic, yet it adds up. Many older adults tell me the hardest part isn't weakness itself, but the uncertainty it creates. You start thinking more before you move. You become cautious in ways you never had to be before. Over the years, I've noticed something interesting. When people talk about leg strength, they usually think only about exercise or aging muscles. And while those things matter, they aren't the whole picture. There are quieter influences working in the background, especially during the night when the body is meant to recover and reset. This is something that often goes unexplained, and many people are never told to even consider it. At night, your body shifts into a different rhythm. Muscles relax, signals slow down. Repair work happens behind the scenes. Many older adults describe waking up feeling stiff, heavy, or unsure on their feet, even if they slept through the night. It can feel confusing. You rested, yet your legs don't feel restored. That mismatch is something I've heard again and again. In many cases, research suggests that certain nutrients play a supportive role during those nighttime hours, not as a cure, not as a quick fix, but as part of the environment your body relies on to maintain strength and stability over time. One of these nutrients is talked about often, yet surprisingly misunderstood. Vitamin D3 comes up in many conversations with older adults, usually in passing. People know it has something to do with bones, but few realize how deeply it's connected to how your legs feel day to day. Many individuals I've spoken with say they didn't notice anything dramatic missing. There was no clear warning sign, just a gradual sense that standing felt heavier than it should. Often people describe it as if the connection between the brain and the legs feels slightly delayed, not numb, not painful, just slower. Research suggests vitamin D plays a role in how muscles receive and respond to signals. When levels quietly drift lower over time, the body may not communicate as smoothly as it once did, and because this change happens slowly, it's rarely obvious. I've heard people say, "I thought I was just getting older." And of course, aging does bring changes, but what's striking is how often these same individuals say no one ever explained that nighttime support matters, that what happens while you sleep may influence how steady you feel when you first stand in the morning. There's also something emotional that comes with this. When your legs feel uncertain, even slightly, it can affect your confidence. You may avoid walking in dim light. You may think twice about stairs. Independence isn't lost in one moment. It's shaped by small decisions repeated every day. Many older adults don't fear falling as much as they fear needing help. That fear is rarely spoken out loud, but it's very real. What I've learned over many years is that awareness changes how people relate to their bodies, not in a way that creates worry, but in a way that brings understanding. When you begin to see that strength is supported quietly, not just built through effort, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself for changes you didn't cause. There's more to this story than most people realize. Vitamin D is only one piece, and even that piece behaves differently later in life than it did when you were younger. Absorption changes, sun exposure changes, the body's response changes. None of this is your fault. It's simply part of how time works on the human body. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Not to do anything, not to decide anything, just to notice how rarely anyone talks about nighttime support or why mornings feel the way they do. Sometimes understanding begins not with action, but with a quiet realization that something important has been overlooked for a long time. As we keep talking, my hope is that you feel less confused by what your body is doing and more gently connected to it. These changes don't mean you're failing. They mean your body is asking to be understood a little differently now. And often, that understanding alone can bring a sense of steadiness you may not have felt in a while. Before I continue, I want to stay with that quiet moment we talked about earlier, the way your legs feel when you first stand, the way your body seems to need a few extra seconds before it agrees to move. Many people tell me that during the day, once they're up and going, things feel manageable, but it's the nighttime and early morning hours that feel different, heavier, less predictable, and that difference often raises questions that don't have easy answers. Over time, I began to notice a pattern in these conversations. People would say their sleep was decent, sometimes even good, yet their legs still felt tired, not sore, not injured, just drained, almost as if the energy never fully came back. In many cases, this leads to frustration because rest is supposed to restore you. When it doesn't, you may start to wonder what's missing. One nutrient that often enters this conversation quietly is magnesium, not in a dramatic way, more in the background. Many older adults don't think about magnesium at all until someone happens to mention it in passing, and even then, it's usually described in a way that sounds technical or confusing, which causes people to tune out. What I've seen is that magnesium is often felt before it's understood. People describe restless legs at night, subtle cramping, a sense that their muscles never fully let go. Others say they wake up feeling as though they worked all night instead of rested. Research suggests magnesium plays a role in how muscles relax and recover, especially during sleep. When that process isn't well supported, the body may stay slightly tense without you realizing it. There's a form called magnesium glycinate that comes up often in discussions, not because it's stronger, but because many people describe it as gentler. I've heard individuals say it doesn't upset their stomach the way other forms sometimes do. More importantly, it seems to align better with nighttime comfort for some people. Again, not as a treatment, but as support, the kind that works quietly while you're not thinking about it. What's interesting is how people describe the change when their nighttime tension eases. They don't say, "My legs are suddenly strong." Instead, they say things like, "I feel less stiff when I stand," or "I don't grip the furniture as tightly." These are small observations, but they matter. Strength isn't only about force, it's also about how safe you feel inside your body. Many older adults tell me they didn't realize how much background tension they were carrying until it softened. When muscles remain slightly clenched for long periods, they use energy even at rest. That can leave you waking up already tired. When that tension eases, mornings often feel a little more forgiving. There's also an emotional side to nighttime discomfort. When your legs twitch or ache, sleep becomes lighter. You may wake more often. Even if you don't fully remember those awakenings, your body does. Over time, this fragmented rest can quietly affect balance and confidence. You may not connect these dots yourself, and most people aren't encouraged to. What's often overlooked is that nighttime is when your body does much of its maintenance work. It's when tissues settle, signals reset, and strain from the day is processed. When that process is incomplete, the effects don't always show up as pain. Sometimes they show up as hesitation, as caution, as that brief pause before standing. I want to be very clear here. These patterns are common. They don't mean something is wrong with you. They don't mean decline is inevitable. They simply reflect how many small systems work together and how easily one quiet imbalance can influence how you feel the next day. There's still another piece that often goes unmentioned, something that doesn't get much attention because it doesn't announce itself with symptoms. Yet over time, it may influence how your muscles and bones cooperate with one another. Many people are surprised to learn this because they assume strength and structure are separate. In reality, they're deeply connected. As you listen, you don't need to remember names or details. Just notice whether any of this sounds familiar. The nighttime restlessness, the morning stiffness, the feeling that your legs want reassurance before they move. Awareness doesn't demand action. It simply opens a door to understanding why your body might be asking for support in quieter ways now. And sometimes, that understanding alone can bring a sense of calm. When you realize these experiences are shared by many others, the worry softens. You're not imagining things. You're noticing real changes, and noticing them is the first step toward feeling steadier again. There's another observation I want to share with you, one that often surprises people when they first hear it. Many older adults assume that bones and muscles live in separate worlds. Bones are thought of as solid and unchanging, and muscles as the parts that weaken with age. But over time, I've seen how closely those two systems listen to one another. When that communication feels off, the body can feel less stable even if nothing appears visibly wrong. This is where vitamin K2 sometimes enters the conversation, particularly a form called MK7. Most people have heard of vitamin K only in passing, if at all. It doesn't announce itself with clear sensations. You don't feel it working. And because of that, it's often overlooked entirely. Yet research suggests it plays a quiet coordinating role, helping the body place strength where it's meant to be supported. Many people describe their legs not as weak, but as unsure, as if the foundation beneath them doesn't feel quite trustworthy. That feeling isn't always about muscle power. Sometimes it's about how supported movement feels from the inside. When bones and muscles don't feel in harmony, confidence can slip, even when ability hasn't disappeared. What I've noticed is that people rarely connect this to nutrition because there's no obvious signal, no ache, no warning, just a gradual sense that balance requires more attention than it used to. In many cases, this leads people to move more cautiously, not because they can't move, but because something feels slightly uncertain beneath them. Vitamin K2 tends to work in the background, which makes it easy to dismiss. Yet some older adults tell me that when their overall support feels steadier, they move with less mental effort. They stop bracing themselves before each step. That mental load matters more than we often realize. When every movement requires thought, daily life becomes tiring. There's something deeply emotional about that. Independence isn't only physical, it's the freedom to move without fear, to stand without negotiation, to walk across a room without planning the route. When that ease begins to fade, people don't always talk about it. They adapt quietly. They make adjustments others never notice. I've seen how reassuring it can be simply to understand that this isn't weakness of character or effort. It's the result of systems aging together, sometimes losing synchronization. When people hear that, their shoulders often drop. There's relief in knowing you haven't done anything wrong. What's also important is that these nutrients, D3, magnesium, and K2, are often discussed separately. Yet in real life, the body doesn't experience them in isolation. Everything works as part of a larger environment. When that environment feels supported, people often describe a sense of internal steadiness rather than dramatic change. You might notice this steadiness most in ordinary moments: standing at the sink, turning in the hallway at night, rising from a chair without that brief moment of doubt. These aren't milestones anyone celebrates, yet they shape how safe you feel each day. Many older adults tell me they don't want to feel younger. They just want to feel secure in their movements. They want to trust their legs again. That desire is deeply human. It's not about reversing time, it's about maintaining dignity and ease in the life you're living now. There's still one thing I want you to hold gently in mind. These patterns don't resolve overnight. The body doesn't rush. Support works slowly, quietly, often beneath awareness. That slowness can feel frustrating in a world that expects quick answers. But in the body, slow is often how stability is rebuilt. As you reflect on what you've been noticing in yourself, try not to judge it. Curiosity is far more helpful than criticism. The body communicates in subtle ways, especially later in life. When you listen without fear, those messages feel less alarming and more informative. And sometimes simply understanding that your body is responding to time, not failing, can change how you experience each step you take. As this conversation begins to settle, I want to slow the pace even more for a moment. Not to introduce anything new, but to give space to what you may already be feeling as you listen. Many people tell me that what stays with them isn't a specific detail, but a sense of recognition, a quiet moment of thinking, yes, that's what it's been like. Aging rarely announces itself clearly. It doesn't arrive with a single event. It shows up in pauses, in adjustments, in the way you become more aware of your body than you ever needed to be before. That awareness can feel unsettling at first, but it can also become a form of wisdom if it's met with patience rather than fear. Over many years, I've seen how powerful it is when someone stops viewing these changes as personal losses and begins seeing them as signals, not warnings, not failures, just information, the body speaking more softly than it once did, asking to be listened to in a different way. What often brings people the most peace is realizing they are not alone in this experience. The hesitation when standing, the careful steps in low light, the desire to remain independent without drawing attention to the effort it sometimes takes. These are shared experiences among many older adults, even though they're rarely discussed openly. You may find yourself thinking differently now when you wake up in the morning or stand at night, not with worry, but with awareness. You might notice how your body responds, how it settles, how it asks for time. That noticing isn't weakness, it's attentiveness. And attentiveness often brings calm. Nothing here is about fixing yourself. There is nothing broken. It's about understanding the environment your body lives in now and how small, quiet forms of support can influence how safe and steady you feel over time. Not dramatically, not immediately, but gently. Many people I've spoken with say that once they stop fighting their body and start cooperating with it, something shifts emotionally. They feel less tense, less impatient with themselves, more accepting of the rhythm they're in. That acceptance doesn't mean giving up, it means moving forward with respect. If there's one thing I hope stays with you, it's this. Your desire for stability, confidence, and independence is completely natural. Wanting to feel secure in your movements isn't about fear. It's about preserving the life you've built, the routines, the quiet freedoms, the ability to move through your day without constant concern. You don't need to decide anything right now. There's no urgency here, just something to sit with, something to think about the next time you notice that familiar pause, and perhaps to meet it with a little more understanding than before. Sometimes the most meaningful changes begin not with action, but with feeling seen. And if you're listening to this and thinking, this finally makes sense, then that awareness alone may already be helping you feel a bit steadier inside.